welcome back to my G1 Retro Reviews. Today we're taking a look at the episode S.O.S. Dinobots, which features the debut of the Dinobots. In this episode, the Autobots build the Dinobots, but these new warriors prove difficult to control. As we begin this episode, I can't help but notice how the animation here, at least for the first minute or so, seems to be really good, or at least better than average. I don't know how they did the animation for these episodes back in the day. I mean, I do know that they did farm them out to multiple animation studios, and that's why one episode might look like poop, and the next one could look amazing, but I don't know if they might have multiple animation studios working on one episode. But the animation in this episode definitely does seem to dip in and out of being pretty decent one minute, and then not so good the next. So the Autobots discover fossilized dinosaur skeletons behind a stone wall in their base. Which, now that I think about it, I wonder if this is where the fossilizers come from. Meanwhile, Soundwave and Reflector are gathering information about a hydroelectric power plant. Man, what is with the Decepticons and these particular type of power plants? Maybe they're really into eco-friendly renewable resources? Back with the Autobots, they're visiting a museum and... wait, what kind of dinosaur is that? So the Autobots proceed with the design and construction of their new Dinobots. Now, this little scene always intrigued me. It seems like Brawn and Prowl are excavating the dinosaur skeletons. I had always presumed that was so they could use them in the construction of the Dinobots, but why would they need to? Although now I'm thinking maybe they're actually excavating them because this cave is where the Dinobots are going to live, so they don't want them stomping around and destroying these skeletons. Yeah, so maybe Brawn and Prowl are taking them out of the cave in order to save them, and maybe donate them to the museum. And so the completed Dinobots are presented to the Autobots. But it's really weird how Ratchet's introducing them, but he has Wheeljack's voice.
Autobots, meet Dinobots!
Or is this supposed to be Wheeljack presenting them, but he has Ratchet's character model? It's so confusing. And it's not like this is the only time when this sort of thing happens. In the same episode, Optimus is talking, but Cliffjumper is gesturing.
But what else can they do?
And in the last episode, there was a scene where Megatron is supposed to be talking, but Optimus Prime's faceplate is moving like he is. But this particular error is especially weird how obvious a mistake it is. I mean, come on, pick one, guys. Either this is supposed to be Ratchet or it's Wheeljack. Just pick one.
Dinobots, huh? I thought you were supposed to make dinosaurs.
Was that supposed to be a joke, Huffer?
This is bad comedy.
This brief shot of Grimlock always stuck out to me because of the way his head is drawn with so much more detail, although not entirely accurate to how he's supposed to look. I'm mainly thinking the nose isn't quite right. But the way he's drawn, he almost looks like a CGI model. But that would have been impossible for this time, right? I also noticed something weird between the Rhino and Shout Factory versions of this episode. When I was originally watching this for review, I was watching it on Tubi. And in that version of the episode, I noticed that when the Dinobots were ordered to clear away the rubble didn't disappear. But when editing this video, I was watching the Shout Factory version, and in that, it seems like the animation is intact. There's the glow effects from the Dinobots' lasers, and the rocks seem to disintegrate. But what's really weird is that the version on Tubi is supposed to be the Shout Factory version because they have like their own section on there and everything. So I then checked my Rhino copy of the episode, and the animation in that matches what is in the Tubi version. So then I checked more of the episode, and found that the annoying and loud stock effects that Rhino added into their G1 DVD releases are not in the Tubi version of this episode. So it's really weird. It's like the Tubi version is a hybrid of Rhino's video, but with Shout Factory's audio. Or who knows? Maybe there's things unique to this Tubi version that aren't in either of the other versions. Kind of like how it was recently discovered that Tubi also had a version of a Transformers Armada episode with alternate audio. Actually, while editing this video, I decided to play the Rhino and Shout Factory versions side by side to see if I could spot any differences. And there actually are a few in this episode. The first one that I noticed was during this same scene, for one shot, Sludge's head is corrected in the Shout Factory version to be all gold instead of having that weird gray section on the side. The next is when the Decepticons are attacking the power plant and Megatron lands. You could see a cute little rainbow beside him in the Rhino version, but not in the Shout Factory version. Which then it immediately cuts to a headshot of Megatron talking, but each version has a different background, and they're both wrong. One is the sky, and one is a rock wall. But as we just saw, he landed in front of the waterfall, so it should be the waterfall behind him, shouldn't it? Another thing is that when Hound is using his radio, he lights up red in the Rhino version, but blue in the Shout Factory version. And the last one that I noticed was that later in the episode, Megatron's face kind of looks like Zartan from Cobra, but it seems like they corrected this in the Shout Factory version. And they even changed the background too. There are some other minor color and special effect differences though, like how in this shot of them making Energon, the glowy effect is slightly different between versions. Or how in this shot of Megatron, his Decepticon logo is more purple in the Rhino version and more pinkish red in the Shout Factory version. And for some reason he seems to be lower in frame too. I really should check some of these episodes for differences in future reviews, because these changes are fascinating. I wonder which would be considered the true version. But enough of that tangent, let's get back to the review.
Of course, the Dinobots have simple brains. They've gone haywire.
Probably because you keep saying they have small brains. So the Dinobots go on a rampage, Grimlock destroys Teletran 1, and Sludge lasers Ironhide in the crotch.
That's smart.
That's all? I guess he's not called Ironhide for nothing. Or maybe he should be called Iron Crotch. Well, Wheeljack subdues the Dinobots with his magnetic inducer, and the Autobots apparently half bury them and then seal them up in the cavern where they found the dinosaur bones in the first place. Aw man, the Dinobots look so sad. They're just watching themselves get buried alive. I mean, they were literally just born. They're like babies.
Babies! They're babies!
You gotta expect them to throw a little tantrum once in a while.
What did you expect? They come out quoting Macbeth?
They're stupid!
Well, they're not stupid, they're infants. Okay, they're stupid infants.
The Autobots are just trapping them in this cave in their base and forgetting about them. Aw, poor Dinobots. So while the Autobots are being bad new daddies, the Decepticons, once again, are attacking a hydroelectric power plant. As we see Soundwave, Thundercracker, Megatron, and... who is that? From the coloring, it kind of looks like Brawn, but what is that thing on their back? It looks like it could be one of Rumble's guns, but where's the other one? And if this is supposed to be Rumble, why is he colored like Brawn? Oh well, here's another repaint idea for you, Hasbro. Rumble Brawn. Brumble? Speaking of weird recolors, when the Seekers are landing, we can quickly see this orange-colored foot land next to Skywarp. Is this Sunstorm? Also, later on, we see a pan of some of the Seekers. And while we can clearly identify Skywarp and Thundercracker, there are two Seekers here that are colored red, black, and gray, which are not Starscream. Nor are they colored like Redwing, for that matter. And the one standing on the building looks somewhat effeminate. Again, Hasbro, perhaps another repaint idea for you? I especially like the idea of a red, black, and gray female Seeker. Apparently Hound's head glows when he's using his radio, which seems like a major design flaw. I mean, if there was any enemy snipers in the area, Hound would be an easy target. I also like how Optimus's helmet transforms when he uses his radio. I'm surprised Takara hasn't tried to work that into one of his Masterpiece figures yet. Maybe for the 4th version.
Autobots, transform! Not you, Bumblebee. Stay here and guard headquarters.
Aw, look at Bumblebee's face. Why did they have to draw him so sad? Poor Bumblebee. He didn't even get to transform. So the Autobots go and fight the Decepticons, and for some reason, some of the Autobots can fly again? Like Gears here. Also, there's 2 blue streaks. See? Here's one that's just shaking his fist, who gets hit by Gears, and then it immediately cuts to another one firing at Rumble. And even later, we see a pan across the Autobots, and there's 1 blue streak at the start of the pan, and then another one at the end. You know who I don't see during this fight who's supposed to be here? Hound. Maybe Hound used his holograms to disguise himself as Bluestreak to, I guess, confuse the Decepticons? Although, if you're going to disguise yourself as someone else to confuse the enemy, why not someone like Optimus Prime? And so the Autobots fall into the river, and here's where I mentioned in the previous episode that Optimus is once again mistakenly colored all blue like his Diaclone-powered convoy toy. Briefly here in the river, and then again later when he's tied up by the Decepticons. So, with no other option, Wheeljack upgrades the Dinobots' brains and reactivates them. And I'm surprised that I never noticed this before, but this is actually the first time that they talk. Before it was grunts and roars and stuff, now they can actually form sentences. Again, I'm surprised that I never noticed that before, but it's a good touch on the writer's part. So the Dinobots agree to help the other Autobots, and they blast a big hole through the side of the mountain in order to get out. Great, now the Autobots have another opening to their base where the Decepticons could sneak in. I'm sure they'll patch up this hole between episodes. And like I mentioned before, when we see the Autobots chained up, Optimus is again mistakenly colored all blue. Although Trailbreaker is also colored gray instead of black. Again, maybe another repaint idea for you, Hasbro. I know there's that new Trailbreaker figure coming out soon. Maybe they'll do a gray repaint as a Pulse exclusive. So the Decepticons are about to execute the Autobots when the Dinobots and Wheeljack come flying in. I know canonically the Dinobots can fly in robot mode, but why is it that Wheeljack is able to fly again in this episode? Also, if they can build new Autobots that can fly, then why can't the other Autobots be retrofitted with this flying tech too? Also, it's interesting how Slag has a red head here in the show, but his regular toy had a black head like the other Dinobots. It was only the Canadian variant of his G1 toy that had a red head, which is accurate to the show. So then, does that mean that Slag in the G1 cartoon is canonically Canadian?
Megatron has fallen! I, Starscream, am now your leader! Decepticons, follow me!
Starscream just being Starscream. Also, if Wheeljack's inhibitor shell was that overpowered that it basically neutralized Megatron in one hit, then why don't they use them on all the Decepticons and then the war would be over?
If on Decepticon turf you happen to tumble, look out, robot, 'cause here comes Rumble!
You know, I wonder if before the war, maybe Rumble was a rapper? Also, the way Grimlock just catches Skywarp in his jaws like that is totally awesome. Man, this half-hour toy commercial is really doing its job. I want to run out and buy some Dinobot toys now. But I guess I'll have to wait for the new Studio Series line. Why does Megatron's face here look like Zartan from Cobra? Also, this is another one of those moments in the show that is homaged in the toys, specifically the Masterpiece line. Although Megatron looks much bigger here in the show. So Wheeljack uses his friend's weapons to heal his fellow Autobots. Which, I don't think that's normally how that works. But then again, how many team-based shooter games are there where there's a character that heals their allies by shooting them? I mean, even in the recent Transformers Battlegrounds game, RC and Wheeljack can shoot their enemies to damage them, or heal their allies with the same attacks. Hey, do you think this is where they got the idea from? And so the Autobots defeat the Decepticons once again, this time in large part to their newest warriors, the Dinobots. This was a pretty good episode. It gave us the Dinobots, or at least the first three. Snarl and Swoop will come in a future episode. And, well, that's kind of it. It was certainly a very memorable episode. What about you? What did you think of this episode, S.O.S. Dinobots? As always, let me know down in the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and do all that other fun stuff. And I'll see you next time for Fire on the Mountain, the return of my boy Jetfire. Skyfire. See you then.